Okay, so we begin this series of courses on integrable systems and their perturbations. And so I am happy to be invited by the BCAM in Bilbao, and which prepares all the technical conditions for this transmission of course. I choose to begin the series of course with a rather elementary conference on Hilbert's 16 problem. I call it Hilbert's 16 problem for undergraduate. And it is for me a very good introduction to dynamical systems in general and bifurcation theory. And also today I will consider some questions, some methods based on numerical analysis of these dynamical systems. To introduce dynamical systems, I will talk about the pendulum to begin with. And generally, I will consider the notion of periodic orbits of a dynamical system. And then I will talk on two particular cases, which are the case of Hamiltonian systems and the case of planar vector fields. Then, in a second part of this talk today, I will develop more in details quadratic planar vector fields and talk about two fundamental theorems which are proved for integrable quadratic planar vector fields. One is due to Dulac's theorem, and another one which is in the spirit of Dulac's theorem, Bottin's theorem. And then I will talk about extension of the Bottin theorem and about the possibility to find 4 limit cycles by bifurcation of quadratic vector fields, small bifurcations of quadratic vector fields. And then in the third part, I will consider very quickly the same kind of problem for cubic systems, cubic planar vector fields. And I will concentrate on perturbations within homogeneous cubic nonlinearities and talk about some results which are also for perturbation of more general cubic system. And then I will make a short conclusion to this first lesson. Okay, so introducing pendulum. A simple pendulum consists of a particle hanging from a rigid massless rod at a pivot point. It freely oscillates in a vertical plane under the action of the gravity, and it is an ideal pendulum. We assume it is not affected by damping or external force. Then Galilei made the first fundamental observation that for small oscillations, there is isochronism of these oscillations. But later, Jacobi gave all the fundamental mathematics necessary to find the formula, explicit formula for the period as a function of the amplitude or equivalently of the energy. And it involves the complete elliptic integral of the first kind. I would like to add some example and say that Christian Huygens made also a very fundamental contribution to the beginning of the theory of the pendulum, because he invented a pendulum clock, which is, in fact, to my knowledge, was never realized. But he made this picture representation of the picture, you see, in fact, a problem if you want to make a clock out of a pendulum, then you have to face the problem that it is not asynchronous. And in fact, Huygens found that if we find some two slides like this, which are given by hyperbolic functions, then in fact, when the rod moves under this constraint, then it is exactly isochronous. So Huygens proved this as a theorem and conceived this as a possible clock. After the theory of clock was developed independently with another idea, but it is a remarkable example. Okay, let us come back now to mathematics. The phase space for a simple pendulum is the two-dimensional plane. So we will say that the dynamical system is planar vector field. The two variables that we consider are denoted B and beta. Beta is the angle of the pendulum measured from the vertical axis in the direction of the top, and where B stands for the momentum of the pendulum. So in fact, if you use these two variables, then there is a canonical symplectic form on the phase space, which is the wedge product of dB wedge d beta, and the motion preserves this symplectic form. The motion is said integrable, is said Hamiltonian. If we assume that the length of the string is 1, while the mass of the pendulum is the parameter L, positive, the gravity constant J, which is usually denoted like J, we write it J square, just because it is J is strictly positive. Then the Hamiltonian of the motion for the simple pendulum writes like this. H is this function of B and beta, and the motion is described by Hamilton's equation. B dot is minus dH over d beta is ij square sine of beta, and beta dot is dH over dB is B over L. Okay, and in fact, when in general we have a dynamical system, the first thing to do to study a dynamical system is to look at the fixed point of the motion. And for a Hamiltonian system, the fixed point of the motion are in fact critical points or equilibria of the function h. And it is easy to deduce from the equation B dot is 0, beta dot equals 0, the solutions. B is necessarily equal to 0, and beta is equal to 0 or pi, because in fact you have here this equation sine beta equals 0. This gives beta equals 0 modulo pi. Okay, so now we look locally at the nature of the stationary point. And in fact, we find that it is an hyperbolic or a saddle equilibrium, as you prefer, at the top, which is unstable equilibria, while the point B beta is 0 pi, which corresponds to the pendulum at the bottom, is an elliptic equilibrium. This follows, obviously, from the linearization of the Hamilton's equation at these 2 points. So for B beta is 0, 0, this is given by this matrix. And this matrix has 2 real eigenvalues with opposite signs. So we find a saddle. And since the linearization at the other point 0 pi is given by this matrix, you have 2 purely imaginary eigenvalues. So in fact, in general, when you find 2 purely imaginary eigenvalues, you may have a focus or a center. But here you know that you have a first integral, so you cannot have a focus. So you deduce that this point is a center. So a center is in dimension 2. It is a dynamical system so that all orbits are periodic in a neighborhood of this singular or equilibrium or critical point. Okay, actually a little bit more work, but very elementary, shows that you have this phase portrait. So here you have the saddle, the center. You have the center at this point. Here you have a saddle, and you have special orbits which connect one saddle to the other. So they are called heteroclinic connection in general for dynamical systems. And you see that this boundary is actually the boundary between orbits which oscillates and orbits which are unbounded. Okay. Okay, so it's distinguished, in fact, two types of solutions of the pendulum. Really, that means geometrically that, in fact, you have motion where you turn without ad infinitum around the stationary point. Okay, now let us talk a little bit about Jacobian elliptic functions. These functions were introduced by Jacobi, but many of their properties were obtained independently by Abel with different notations. So Jacobi considered this equation, and in fact, he wanted to solve, I have lost my, he wanted to solve phi as a function of u. And he proved that there is an inverse, and he calls this the amplitude function. It's a function which is regular in u and on this parameter k, which is related to the quantities that we have in the family of pendulum. Now, in the pendulum equation, by elimination just of the variable b, you get beta, which is a function, this explicit function of the time, and setting h equal to u and u equals to this. So this defines the constant k in terms of the j and I and the linear energy level. And now if we introduce the three functions, which are sine, node sine u, or sine amplitude, excuse me, of u, cosine amplitude of u, and dn of u, then we get d by d phi over du is dn of u, in fact, the value for b. So you have completely integrated the system in the sense that you can explain give explicit expression of the solutions b and beta in function of t and of the parameters using some simple functions, which are here elliptic functions. Okay. Now let me consider more general situation of any dimension. So in general, a vector field in Rn is given by n differential equations of the form x1 dot is dx1 over dt is f1 of xn, x1 xn. Xn dot is dxn over dt, fn of x1 xn. That I can write more in a more, I would say, simple manner. X dot is dx over dt is a function of x, where x is coordinates of a point x1, xn in Rn. So we say that we have a vector field in Rn, or a vector field with n indeterminates. Now, in general, for such a vector field, So we have, first of all, I did not write it on the slides, but the first interesting quantities to determine are the zeros of the vector field, which are the equilibrium, if you like, the equilibrium. Then we say that a point is regular if it is not a stationary point. So a stationary point is a point so that x is x of this point at this point is equal to 0. Now, definition. A periodic orbit of period t is an orbit of the vector field passing by a regular point, x0, so it's important to add, and so that the solution exists for all t in R and verifies x of t plus capital T is equal to x of t. So sometimes one needs to precise the minimal period of the periodic orbit, which is the smallest real positive number, capital T, so that x of t plus t, capital T, is x of t for all t. Okay, so geometrically, let gamma be a periodic orbit of a vector field of class Ck. So this means k times continuously differentiable, passing by point x0. So if we consider this segment, it is a germ of hyperplane transverse to gamma at the point x0. Then if we denote phi t of x, the flow of the vector field at time t applied at point P, then the periodic orbit is identified with the set gamma such that x is phi t of x0. x0 is the initial point for t varying between 0 and capital T. There is a first theorem, very elementary, a consequence of the fundamental theorem of differentiable functions, inverse of differentiable functions. There exists a delta and the differentiable function x goes to tau of x of class Ck. It's important that it has the same regularity as the vector field, defined on in the neighborhood x minus x0 less than delta, so that phi at time tau of x is equal, belongs to sigma. Sigma is the cross section here. And this function is called the function of the time of first return map. So you have a return map, you have an orbit, and you take a cross section, and so there is a delta small, so that when you start on sigma, not on the periodic orbit, then you come back to a point which is also in sigma, not far from the point x we start with. And this function tau of x is called the function of the time of first return. Now, this is a proof, but it is elementary, so I can just only return the definition, possible definition that we can extract from the existence of this tau of x. If we define the first, so we define the function p of x, which is phi tau of x of x. This is called the first return mapping of the vector field associated to the periodic orbit. So this is an important ingredient. It was first defined, to the best of my knowledge, by Henri Poincaré. And it is one of the ingredients to study, the very important ingredient to study periodic orbits. And I will show you examples in this talk. Okay, so now let us go back to Hamiltonian systems. So definition of Hamiltonian system in general. So I first give a definition where the symplectic form omega is the sum of dxi dyi. So it is a particular case, but it is a particular case which is important because there is a fundamental theorem of symplectic geometry which says that any symplectic form can be reduced to the sum of dxi dy on some neighborhood. And so locally, it will always be of this form. So let us consider this case where you have a vector field and a function h, which is defined globally on some open set of R to M. So it is a function of x1, xm, y1, ym, and the Hamiltonian vector field associated to the function h is defined by following Hamilton's equations. Xi dot is dh over dyi, yi dot is minus dh over dxi, I running from 1 to m. So for instance, if we consider m equal 1, so m equal 1 is the case where the dimension n is equal to 2, and I gave you already one example of Hamiltonian vector fields with the pendulum. But here is another one. So if we consider the function 1/2 of x1 squared plus y1 squared, then the solutions is the vector field associated to this function is in fact a rotation, the linear rotation vector field. X1 dot is y1, y1 dot is minus x1. And all its orbits are periodic of same period, 2 pi, except the origin, which is a stationary point of special type called the center. So this is an example in dimension 2 of what we call, in fact, the harmonic oscillator. Now let us consider this other planar Hamiltonian vector field, which is associated to the function y1, x1, so the product of the two coordinates, and depends on a parameter lambda, which is positive. Then the equation for the motion is x1 dot is lambda x1, y1 dot is lambda y1. So in fact, all orbits are equilateral hyperbolas. X1, y1 is constant, except the origin, which is called a saddle point. And it is straightforward to check that this function h is the first integral associated to the Hamiltonian vector field. Okay, so let us move now to the general definition of planar vector fields. So I choose a little bit a different notation to simplify. Instead of x1, y1, I drop the 1. So a planar vector field is given by two functions, f of xy and g of xy. And it is, we are interested in the vector field defined by dx over dt is f of xy, dy over dt is j of xy. And we assume that they are at least of class C1. Then we have a local flow, which is the application x0, y0 goes to x of t, y of t at time t. And in fact, in this talk, we will be essentially interested in the case where x, f, and j are polynomials. And this is for this class of vector fields that we have very interesting problems, mathematical problems, like the Hilbert 16 problem. Okay, so let us begin the study of planar vector fields. So as I said, in general, we begin by computation of the stationary points. So stationary points x0, y0 here will be a solution of f of x0, y0 is equal to j of x0, y0 equal to 0. Okay, now we linearize in the neighborhood of x0, y0, and it is natural to look at first order approximation in some sense. So a stationary point is said to be elementary or simple if this Jacobian is not 0 at when it is computed at x0, y0. Now let us consider lambda and mu the two eigenvalues of this matrix, the Jacobian matrix, and assume that they are not zero. Or if you prefer, the product lambda mu is different of zero. Then if the two eigenvalues are real and of opposite signs, the stationary point will be called saddle. I have already introduced this terminology. If the two eigenvalues are real of same sign, then the stationary point is attractive node if lambda and mu are negative, or repulsive or unstable node if lambda and mu are positive. And if the two eigenvalues are complex conjugate, and if the real part is negative, respectively positive, the stationary point is called an attractive or stable, repulsive or unstable focus. And we have also the case of the center where all orbits are periodic. So in the previous cases, the stationary point is hyperbolic. So in fact, this means that the real part of the eigenvalues are strictly different of zero. The previous theorem so the theorem of stable and unstable manifold applies, and in particular in the saddle case, there are locally invariant manifolds, which are curves, one stable and one unstable, which are a priori defined locally near the stationary points. So a very important part of the analysis of the writing the phase portrait is to analyze if there are connections between saddles or not, for instance. And in the case where the two eigenvalues are purely imaginary, so the nature of the stationary point, which is not hyperbolic, cannot be decided only on the linear approximation of the vector field near the stationary point. A special study has to be done, and it is called the center focus problem. Okay. Let me remark that in general, a differentiable function, h of x, y, is a first integral of the vector field if the derivatives along the flow is equal to 0. Then the function h is constant along the orbits of the vector field. So for instance, if we have a Hamiltonian vector field, it is easily verified that this Hamiltonian vector fields has the function h as first integral. But there are examples, of course, of vector fields that have first integral, but which are not necessarily Hamiltonian. Okay, now in the limitation where we consider periodic orbits of planar vector fields, the periodic orbits are also called cycles. And this is a definition of Henri Poincaré. A limit cycle is a periodic orbit which is isolated among the set of periodic orbits. So that means that you have a periodic orbit, and in the neighborhood of these periodic orbits, then the orbits are not periodic. So they asymptotically tend to or when t tends to plus infinity or minus infinity. Okay, recall some interesting formula due to Liouville. If we study the solutions near a periodic orbit, it is useful to introduce the matrix A of t, which is the differential of f along the orbit, gamma of t. And the Liouville formula gives you the determinant of the flow at time t as the exponential of the integral between 0 and t of the trace of A of s ds. And in dimension 2, the differential of the first return map is the matrix extracted from phi of t by erasing the last line and last column. And it yields a formula for the derivatives when the variable is equal to 0 of the first return map. It is the exponential of the integral of the divergence of x. So the divergence is df over dx plus dj over dy. And from this formula, in fact, you have, so be careful because there is some mistake here, I'm sorry. So a hyperlumic limit cycle is such that p prime of 0 is the exponential of this quantity is different of 1. Or if you prefer, this integral here is different of 0. It is necessarily attractive or repulsive both on each side of the limit cycle, but there are also limit cycles which are not hyperbolic, where this integral is equal to 0. Okay, now if you want to complete the classification of I would say phase portrait of planar vector fields, then you have stationary points, you have limit cycles or periodic orbits, but you may have also singular cycle. So singular cycle of a vector field, planar vector field, is an invariant compact set, which is a finite union of stationary points, P1, Pk, and of orbits, so that the omega limit and alpha limit of the orbits are among the stationary points, Pk, k varying from 1 to s. And there is this very beautiful theorem, the first important theorem of the theory of planar vector fields, which is the Poincaré-Bennigsen theorem. So this is a classification of possible omega limit sets or alpha limit sets. Consider a vector field with two components. So the regularity should be C2. So let gamma m be a solution defined for all values of t, so that the orbit of m is precompact. So we assume that the orbit doesn't go to infinity. Assume that the vector field displays a finite number of stationary points in this omega limit set, omega of m. Then, if there are no stationary points, omega of m is necessarily a periodic orbit and a cycle. If there are no regular points, then omega of m is necessarily a stationary point. And if there are both stationary points and regular points in omega of m, then omega of m is a singular cycle. So the proof can be read in several books, like, for instance, I wrote a book on dynamical systems where I included this proof. It was a book with applications to biology, associations in biology. But you may find also this, for instance, in a very beautiful book of Sotomayor, Georges Sotomayor from INPA. Okay, so this theorem is important because it tells you in particular that you cannot get chaos with planar vector fields. But you may have a lot of open, interesting questions still. Okay. Now I am at this point where I can define the Hilbert-16 problem and present the Hilbert-16 problem. This is the most challenging question, to my opinion, posed to bifurcation theory of dynamical system. Why is it a very nice topic of mathematical research? Because it borrows methods from various fields of pure and applied mathematics. So you will see in my series of lectures that we use a lot of algebraic geometry and analytic geometry. We use complex foliation theory. we use integrable systems theory because often we cannot get more information than what we get as a perturbation of an integrable system. This is, of course, the main specialty is called qualitative theory of differential equations. But there are many interesting works related with computer algebra as well. I will try to give you some examples in this talk. And I will emphasize today on computation methods of numerical analysis, like Auto and XPP. And finally, it is a very interesting subject also for applications. So it is classic that the first examples with van der Pol system are useful, come from physics. But in chemistry, then you have Lotka, Volterra. Lotka was a chemist. In economics, then you have the cycles in economy, and they are described as limit cycles. Population dynamics, predator-prey. And neuroscience, for me, it is the most beautiful contribution of dynamical systems. They are in neuroscience because when it's fascinating that with the notion of bursting oscillations, then you recover examples of situations which are very hard to prove experimentally. And it's fascinating that you have a mathematical explanation for such phenomena. Okay, so David Hilbert, it is called Hilbert 16 problem because Hilbert posed this problem in the first in the Congress of Mathematicians in 1900, and he wrote this text in French. And so I read it and then I translate. So this was the problem number 16 and part B. J'attirerai l'attention sur la question suivante qui me semble pouvoir être attaquée au moyen de la méthode de la variation continue des coefficients. La réponse à cette question est d'ailleurs importante pour la topologie des familles de courbes définies par des équations différentielles. Déterminer le nombre maximum et leur situation respective des cycles limites de M. Poincaré dans le cas d'une équation différentielle du premier ordre. So I translate. So I will insist on the following questions, which seems to me attainable by the method of the continuous variation of the coefficients. So you see here the idea of extension of a system and prolongations of periodic orbits. It's fascinating to read it in Hilbert. The answer to this question is important, for instance, for the topology of the family of curves defined by differential equations. And the precise question he asked is determine the maximum number and the relative situations of limit cycle defined by Monsieur Poincaré. So I recall you the definition. In the case of a differential equation of first order, so when you have a planar vector fields, you have dx over dt is f of xy, dy over dt is j of xy. It is more or less equivalent, the foliation is equivalent to dy over dx is f of xy over j of xy. So it is a first order differential equation in Hilbert's sense, because you have the first derivative only of y as a function of x. So it's not second order also. But let me now re-explain what is this problem and the modern meaning that we put on the question. So given a polynomial planar vector field, x dot is f of xy, y dot is j of xy. So now the question set in the Hilbert 16 problem part B is interpreted as follows. Is there a uniform bound n of n to the number of limit cycles of a polynomial vector fields so that degree of p and degree of q is less or equal to n? At this point, I would like to say that if you have only a smooth vector field, C infinity, then the problem doesn't make sense because you can have examples with infinitely many limit cycles. So if you want a finiteness, you need to add some analyticity condition, not only at finite distance, but also at infinite distance. And so in fact, you see that the problem of finding a bound or finding an explicit bound depending on n makes sense only for polynomial vector fields after all. Okay, next, in fact, what can be said of the respective locations of limit cycles? For instance, in a quadratic planar vector fields, is it possible to have two vector fields, two limit cycles, one included in the other, and then another one far in another? Or is it possible to have 3, 1, or is it possible to have 2, 2? You see, it is really hard problems and very interesting problems where people have developed a lot of amazing, very tricky techniques, including techniques based on algebraic geometry. What can be said about the size of the limit cycles? I have the feeling that it is extremely important. It is important because in the recent years, we have realized that we have very fascinating problems of bifurcations of limit cycles for vector fields with different time scale. You imagine that you have y, for instance, x, with in front of x epsilon, then you have a fast variable x, slow variable y, then you may find a new type of limit cycles in this setting and with a completely different methodology to study. Can we see the limit cycles in the numerical simulation? So after the first example of 4 limit cycle in quadratic planar vector fields, then one of the basic questions was posed to realize numerical simulation to check where are these limit cycles. So I will speak a little bit about this question also today. Given a limit cycle of a given vector field x0 and a path gamma epsilon in the set of polynomial vector fields of fixed degree, can we follow it into a limit cycle of x of gamma epsilon, and what are its limits? Maybe it goes to actually it can go only to a singular cycle or to a stationary point. So this is called keeping track of a limit cycle along a path, or continuation techniques by like it is called in Auto or XPP. Okay, so this was a short introduction to the subject, and so maybe we now focus on. You have questions, so it's okay. It's okay. We focus in this second part on quadratic planar vector fields. And I will successively explain Dulac's theorem, Bottin's theorem, and extension of the Bottin theorem, which are subject to research actually. And I will also talk about the possibility to get 4 limit cycles of quadratic vector fields by perturbation of double centers. Okay, so Henri Dulac is famous for 2 different reasons. One is he announced the fact that any polynomial planar vector fields have finitely many limit cycles. So his proof was unfortunately incomplete, but we still believe that maybe by some introducing other techniques, then we will be able to simplify the actual demonstration that this theorem is true. But Dulac is also known for a tour de force at that time for describing all the centers for quadratic vector fields. And it is this contribution that I will explain today, this contribution of 1908. Then Bottin used the Dulac list of centers of quadratic planar vector fields, and he performed a perturbative approach of quadratic vector fields, 1952 in Russian, 1954 in English, and even 1949 in French, by the way. He gives the proof that at most 3 limit cycles can appear in an arbitrarily small perturbation within quadratic polynomial vector fields. It took many years to the mathematical community of ODEs to fully understand the technical aspects of these two essential contributions. Okay, so what is the Dulac theorem? Perhaps the best way to present it is because it is a result which is algebraic. It's good to present it in the setting of complex foliations. But I will, this is what is written in my text here, but I will comment what is the real version of it. So for the complex one, we consider the set of quadratic plane differential system, but with complex coefficients. And we consider the set of such quadratic system which display a Morse critical point. So a Morse point is a stationary point where the Hessian of the vector field is not degenerate. So in fact, in the real, we say that we consider the set of vector fields, which are real planar vector fields, which are tangent to a rotation. And so in the real, you have the rotation, x dot is minus y, or y, if you like, plus p of xy, and y dot is minus, so one is x, the other is minus, no, sorry. You have x dot is y dot is minus x, and you add a quadratic polynomial, homogeneous quadratic polynomial in the two perturbative parts, so p of xy plus q of xy. And so you see that it depends on 6 parameters, because you have ax squared plus by squared plus cxy, and a prime x squared plus b prime y squared plus c prime xy. And so you are in this 6 parameter family. And in fact, you look at this set, so in the real, where all orbits are closed, or are limit cycles, if you prefer, in the neighborhood of the origin. Okay, so you have a center, a linear center, and you perturb it by some quadratic homogeneous vector field, and you want to find the perturbations so that the vector field, once it is perturbed, has still a center. So in fact, if it has a center, Poincaré proved that it is necessarily integrable. So in fact, another way to explain in the real form this theorem of Dulac is to say, if we take a vector field, a family of vector field, then we want to describe the center set. So this is the set of perturbed vector field, so that it will have a center at the origin. And in fact, we want to find all the list. And so Dulac proved that this is an algebraic set and that it has some finite number of strata. And this list is the following. So you have one component where you have 3 invariant lines. No, I'm sorry. You have one component where you have a first integral which is a cubic. So it is Hamiltonian, which is cubic. And when you take a cubic Hamiltonian, you get a quadratic vector field, of course. So you have this component, which is Hamiltonian. You have one component, which is well known from biologists. It is the Lotka-Volterra component, where you have 3 invariant lines. And there is one component which is difficult to study, which is the reversible component, where you have an invariant quadric, no, an invariant conic, sorry, and a line. And you have a fourth codimension 4, Q4, which is where you have a cubic, an invariant cubic, and an invariant conic. So this case we call codimension 4 is certainly the case which is the less easy to understand. So I write some comments on this. Some more explanation should be given about Q4. This is a codimension 4. So this is this family of example. You have quadratic, quadric, conic part, which is a parabola F2, and you have a cubic. And the integral h is the cube of F2 over the square of F3. And it defines actually a quadratic vector field because you have cancellation terms. So more or less the foliation is defined by 3F3 dF2 minus 2F2 dF3. And it is of degree 2, in fact. Okay, so this classification is certainly one of the most important contributions of the study of quadratic planar vector fields. And it has already links with the theory of integrable systems. Here you have a first integral. So one, in the Hamiltonian case, it is the usual h, and it is a polynomial. But in general, you have, and it is the most surprising result of Dulac, you have, in fact, in general, first integral which are of Darboux type. So they are factors F1, F2, F3 with some exponent. And you have first integrals of the form F1 to lambda 1, F2 to the lambda 2, F3 to the lambda 3. And in fact, this is the generic pieces of the center variety. But in fact, you may have degeneracy also, where the Darboux integrable form tends to what is called generalized Darboux, where instead of a polynomial with some exponent, you have exponentials. Okay. So I should have written this in the very beginning of this part. So this is the family that we consider more specifically. You have the rotation. You add some term which breaks the rotation, breaks the centers, and makes a focus. If lambda is positive, it is repulsive focus. If lambda is negative, it is attractive focus. And you have these 6 parameters here, which are concerned with the perturbation of the linear vector field at the origin. This family depends on 7 parameters. It's a very huge number in bifurcation theory. We understand more or less all the generic bifurcations until codimension 3. Here you work with 7 parameters. So it's already, it tells you that it is a hard problem. In fact, you can have some action on change of time or by scaling of x and y. So in fact, you can reduce to 6 by the action of the linear group and change of time. The center set has these following components: the Lotka-Volterra component, 3 invariant lines. It is of codimension 2. The reversible component, what it means? It means that for these examples, you have a symmetry, in fact. The symmetry can be very complicated, but you have a symmetry. And in fact, Poincaré, from the very beginning, he observed that if you have a perturbation of a center, and if you perturb in such a way that the first return map is symmetric, necessarily all orbits are closed. So you find this family of examples of reversible components which belong to reversible components. It is of codimension 3. The Hamiltonian component is of codimension 3. You have invariant cubics. And the Q4 components of codimension 4, whose solutions are given by curves of degree 6. So in fact, Lubomir Gavrilov and his student Gauthier and Iliev, and they, in fact, they succeeded to show that these are elliptic curves. It's a very amazing result. And in general, you have a list of examples which can be integrated by family. They are associated to family of elliptic curves, and it is very nice to study because in that case you may have a lot of techniques which work in the setting of elliptic curves or perturbation of elliptic curves. Okay, now let us go back to the next step, which is some very important ingredient. Because when we have the Dulac theorem, we have a lot of very nice examples of centers. And of course, if we look for limit cycles, then we may hope that perturbing the integrable case, you will get centers. You will get limit cycles. And so the theory of Bartin is the first approach to count possible number of limit cycles in this setting. Okay, so let us introduce more techniques, more technicalities in the study of the Poincaré return map. So if we consider this family of examples here, you see that if we remain close to the origin, then we will have a first return map. Actually, it may be not defined at 0, 0, but we can prove that there is an extension to 0, 0 in that case. Okay, so we consider a cross-section of the flow. For instance, we take the X, the sigma is the X segment on the line of the X. And we consider lambda and A and B parameters, and they are small enough. So the equation remains transverse to sigma. And so there is a first return mapping called the Poincaré return mapping, which is given by a convergent series. It is analytic. And here you have the coefficients which depend on the parameters. So lambda and A0, A and B. These coefficients are sometimes called the Lyapunov coefficients. And what is very nice is that for lambda equals 0, these are polynomials in AB. Okay, and then we have a family of polynomials. So let me assume lambda equal to 0. So you see that Botin understood that it is important to look at the ideal generated by the coefficients, the Lyapunov coefficients, if you like, in the ring of polynomials. And now we call it the Botin ideal. This terminology was first described in an article that I wrote with Charles Pugh in JDE. So note that the isolated zeros P of xi minus xi are in one-to-one correspondence with the limit cycle, because when you have the first return map, if you have fixed point of the first return map, then that means that you will have a periodic orbit at that point. So the limit cycles are in one-to-one correspondence with the zeros of P of xi minus xi and in a small neighborhood of 0, 0. And now, in fact, if we consider the sequence of ideals, Ik, which are generated by the k first Lyapunov quantities, then we have clearly an increasing sequence of ideal. And by some strange, in fact, Hilbert himself proved this key theorem that this sequence of increasing sequence of ideals necessarily becomes stationary after some k0. So we have a natural index number, which we call the Botin number. In fact, after eventually reindexation, it is possible to introduce analytic functions, which are called the factors, so that P of xi minus xi is this term here, plus this finite sum, which is here. And then actually you make a kind of division. You use successively a Rolle lemma, saying that, in fact, between 2 points where you have a 0, then you have 0 of the derivative. And after some consideration, so by the way, it was first proved in 1986 in my paper with Pugh. For any Botin ideal, the number of zeros is less or equal to the Botin index k0. Now it's well-known notion, of course. So this is indeed easily proved by induction using the Rolle lemma. So in 1952, Botin proved that for the example of the family 19, so this is this one, then the Botin index is k0 is equal to 3. But he proved also, this is an upper bound, and this bound is optimal, in fact. There are examples of perturbations with 3 limit cycles. So you see, you have the following message. If you consider the family of centers, the family of vector fields which are tangent to a rotation, and you make some perturbation where A0, A20, A11, A02, B02, B20, B11, B02 are very small, as well as lambda, then the maximal number of limit cycles that you will get is 3. And there are examples where you can find exactly perturbations with 3 limit cycles. Okay, so, alors, let me see. Okay, actually, when you think to this theorem, you realize that there is a very natural extension that we should look at it. So we have the center variety. And the center variety contains, of course, the point 0, 0. So the Bottin theorem is a perturbation theorem of the linear vector field. But maybe if you start with an initial vector field, which is not the rotation, but some point on the center set, and you perturb it, maybe you will get, so we will get certainly other type of limit cycles, but maybe we can get more limit cycles. This is, or maybe less, actually. And so we can consider a local perturbation inside the quadratic vector fields around this point. Then there is a local Bottin ideal and a local Bottin index. This local Bottin index is now called the cyclicity around this point. By the way, the terminology cyclicity, it was already introduced. It was also introduced in my article with Pew. And we can, in particular, look how the cyclicity changes as we move the point on one of the components of the center variety. This is a subject of current research, and actually, there are still some positions in the center variety where we don't know this cyclicity. There are still examples which are too hard to compute. Let me explain you that, for instance, the cyclicity of the Lotka-Volterra center, then this is equal to 2. And at the moment, this was proved by Lubomir Gavrilov, I think. And at that time, it came as a surprise. In fact, it is remarkable. You get actually less limit cycles than if you perturb the origin. The cyclicity for QH was equal to 2, is the same. And in fact, you have a stratification of this center variety, and you may have points at the intersection of 2 strata. And these are, of course, the points where it is hard to compute. So the intersection of QH with QLV, Hamiltonian with Lotka-Volterra, this cyclicity is equal to 3. And the cyclicity of the reversible case is not fully known yet. There are still very few examples where we don't know what it is. For the moment, I hope I am right, the cyclicity for Q4, it is proved for the moment that it is less than 5, and conjectured that it is less than 3. But, okay. Okay. So what should I explain? Maybe I explain a little bit more precisely these Q4 centers. So the Q4 centers, they form an irreducible component of maximal codimension of the center variety. It has been shown that the maximal cyclicity of a Q4 center is less or equal to 5. And it is a result by Yuling Zhao, 2011. Although it is conjectured that it is equal to 3. So these integrable vector fields are given by this family. The case C equals 0 is the intersection of Q4 with QR. And the solutions are given by these algebraic curves. And it is remarkable that these are elliptic curves. This is why for C equals 0, it is possible to make the computation. Okay. Okay, when you have a generic point on this center manifold, actually you can compute with first order bifurcation. But when you have a point which is degenerated in the sense that it is intersection of two strata, then you need to go to higher order perturbation theory. So let me precise more this situation. So instead of using several parameters, you look at just one parameter of perturbation. So we consider family of one parameter of planar vector fields, or equivalently, you can take forms. And we assume, for instance, that we have perturbation of a Hamiltonian system. So this vector field X depends on a parameter epsilon, and for epsilon equals 0, it is Hamiltonian. Sometimes we prefer to write minus dh instead of dh, but it's the same. Where we assume that the Hamiltonian vector fields display a period annulus, so that means that you have an annulus full of periodic orbits, and surrounding a non-degenerated center. So if we consider a cross-section sigma to the flow of H for epsilon small enough, X epsilon has a first return map, L of X epsilon, and there is a formula due to Pontryagin and independently to Poincaré that the first derivative of this first return map relative to the parameter epsilon is the integral of the perturbed one form along the level lines of H. But there are cases where you have degeneracy, and the first order bifurcation function can be identically 0. This is so, for example, when sigma is a component of the center set Cn included in a component sigma prime of the center set Cm, where m is larger than n. This is a situation which was discovered by Henrik Johanneck. I will talk about him soon. Or when x0 belongs to the intersection of two more components, sigma and sigma prime. But you may have also situations where you have a symmetry. If you have a first integral and that the integrating factor and the first integral become invariant under the action of a finite group, and that the perturbation at first order is not invariant, but only relatively invariant, then you need to go to higher order computations. And so in 1995, by the way, reading for some time the article of Dulac, I was inspired by the article of Dulac. I discovered that if the perturbation omega satisfies some properties that I call star property, then it was possible to find a sequence of polynomials so that if the first derivative is 0, identically 0, then you have a formula for the second derivative. And more generally, if the n-1 derivative is 0, then you have a formula for the first derivative, which is not 0. And actually, rather immediately, Iliev gave a lot of examples, and in particular, he studied the full perturbations of the harmonic oscillator. It's very nice using this technique. And in 2000 something, Lubomir Gavrilov made a drastic, I would say, renovation, a drastic progress in in the field, because in fact, he gave a property, general property. So he did not assume any star property. So in general, he was able to find a formula using what are called iterative integrals. And in fact, this was a major progress. So more or less now we have to find examples where we can compute with these iterative integrals, and we just found an example in an article I will talk about in this sequence of course. Okay, so you have questions maybe, or okay, I go ahead. Okay. From the beginning, I explained a situation when you perturb a single periodic annulus. But maybe vector field may have different period annuli. And it is possible to prove, for instance, that if we take quadratic vector field, then the number of quadratic period annuli of a quadratic polynomial vector field is less or equal to 2. And there are examples where you have 2 periodic annulus. This is what I called perturbations of double centers. One important question that I would like to investigate a little bit more is the possibility to find for perturbation of a double center for quadratic vector fields, the possibility to find the famous a number of 4 limit cycles. So this was in fact proved by Mawan Han and Pei Yu in 2012. And I like to revisit their article because this is something that I consider as a very important theorem. In fact, if you look at general quadratic planar vector fields, then you have already examples of where appeared 4 limit cycles, and it was an important, very important discovery for the subject, because meanwhile there has been an article by Petrovsky and Landis where they announced that a quadratic polynomial vector field, a quadratic planar vector field, has at most 3 limit cycles. So this discovery by Chen and Wang and Shi in the 90s, 80s were actually very important examples because they were counterexamples to this theorem of Petrovsky and Landis. Okay, so in fact, this is the family of double reversible centers. So that what I mean is that you see that this vector field, first of all, it has an invariant line 1 plus ax equals 0, because if you write you replace 1 plus ax equal 0, you find x dot equals 0, so it's stable, it's invariant. You have an invariant line, and you have actually, if you look at the stationary point, you have y equal to 0, and you have minus x plus x squared is equal to 0. So you see that you have two stationary points, one above, and no, it is x, so it is one on the left and one on the right. And now if you compute locally, you find that you have a center. And this family is reversible. So you have two centers, one centered at 0, 0, and one centered at 0, 1. Okay, and so Marwan-Han and Peiyou consider this perturbation. Actually, the shape of the perturbation can be explained by the theory of essential perturbation of Iliev. And we have recently, with Dongmei Xiao and Lubomir, given a general approach to this, to the fact that it suffices to take this perturbation instead of a 6-parameter family. You can it suffices to take a 3-parameter family. So this is an important recent contribution, which use a lot of algebraic geometry. But for this family, it was already discussed by Iliev, and so we know that we can compute with this. Okay, and so yes, we have to assume A less minus 1 here. So there may appear small limit cycles. So this is a result of Marwan-Han and Peiyou. There may appear one large limit cycle or two large limit cycles. And so in this family of examples, there are 4 limit cycles, 3 near 0, 0, and a larger one near 1, 0. In fact, this is another similar configuration. This is a picture which has been obtained by Mathieu Desroches within the audience in Bilbao. This is one example which comes from the article of Marwan-Han and Peiyou. And so we see, in fact, in one of the these are the two stationary points. And we have actually, we can see the 4 limit cycles, but in fact, the scaling on one part of this figure is not the same as the scaling of this other part of the figure. This is a trick, but it's very nice to check by numerical computations. Okay. So our program is to explore other cases which are in the quadratic reversible case. In the next one of the next conference, I will explain the classification of double centers that we have revisited with Pei-Xing Yang. She's a young professor in Shanghai Jiaotong. Actually, Mathieu was able to take this limit cycle and explore the variation of this limit cycle as the parameter vary. And so we have with this technique of Otto so this is Otto and this is not XPP. This is Otto, yes. Are very, very interesting to use for this subject. Maybe a few words about numerical continuation. So, so here I follow the lines of Mathieu, in fact. So the term numerical continuation refers to a family of algorithms denoted by the very general term path-following methods, used to compute branches of solutions of nonlinear equations. This is undetermined because you have a function f from Rn plus 1 to Rn, because there is one more unknown than equations. Therefore, away from singularities, one expects that the solution set of this is a one-dimensional manifold, and which we'll refer to as a solution branch embedded in n+1 dimensional space. A number of problems can be put in the form of 13. One important example comes from the discretization of parameterized families of differential forms, differential equations of the form x dot is f of x lambda. X is in Rn, it corresponds to the state variables, and lambda is a given control parameter of the system. So in this framework, various solutions of this equation can be computed by solving a nonlinear equation of the form f of x lambda is 0, where f can be equal to small f or also involve additional terms. In particular, when looking for lambda-dependent families of stationary solutions of this equation, one needs to solve exactly f of x lambda equals 0, which is following the stationary points. So parameterized families of periodic solutions. So we want to follow periodic orbits, and more generally, parameterized families of orbit segment solutions can also be computed together with suitable boundary and integrable conditions within some general framework. The main theoretical tool on which numerical continuation relies is the implicit function theorem applied to a suitable parametrization of the solution curve that allows us to compute it past fault points. So this is a key idea. Namely the parametrization by the arc length of the solution curve. So this idea is one of the cornerstones of numerical continuation. Indeed, by parameterizing the solution curve by the projection of the arc length onto the tangent curve to the solution branch at a given point, one can compute this curve past fault points, and hence, in a dynamical context, trace unstable as well as stable branches of solutions, stationary or periodic. The way the solution is actually computed is through a predictor-corrector procedure. The predictor is taken along the tangent to the curve already computed at the last computed point and at a fixed distance from it. Then the corrector is obtained by applying a Newton-type iteration perpendicularly to the tangent to the curve at the last computed point and to find the next point on the curve. This amounts to appending to the equation f of x lambda equals 0, the pseudo-arc length equation, which is here, where S is the arc length of the curve measured along the tangent space, and delta S is the continuation step size. So equation 30 together with 32 forms a square system of algebraic equation, and one can compute a unique solution of this system in general. In the case of periodic solutions, one needs to add to this procedure the discretization of the periodic orbit. This is usually done by means of orthogonal collocation, where the orbit is approximated by piecewise polynomials defined inside mesh intervals. They interpolate the original vector field at a certain well-chosen points, collocation points, in each of these mesh intervals and exactly solve the system at the boundary points of the mesh intervals. Note that the time is rescaled so that the actual period of the solution becomes a parameter that we can solve for. Finally, the system is closed by adding to the algebraic equation and the pseudo-arc length equation an integral condition that uniquely selects the periodic orbit. Once we have fixed the period, we need to fix the phase. We have to use the theory of phase on periodic orbits. Okay, some reference to be quoted at this point of the talk. The interest in the presence of multiple limit cycles for planar vector fields originates in the Hilbert-16 problem. And there is a class of system which is of special interest, which is called linear systems. So the usual linear equation is this equation: x dot is y minus f of x, y dot is minus x. There is no epsilon. Huh? This is you can consider also a generalized linear system, which is of the form x dot is y minus f of x and y dot is equal to j of x. And this class is a very interesting example. Actually, this is the family of example which defines a second order differential equation. So it's natural in the context of mechanics, for instance, to introduce this type of examples. And in 2000, Smale gave a list of problems, and he gave in his list the Smale 13 problem, which is exactly the same as Hilbert-16 problem, but for the special class of linear system. And specialists agree certainly with this. Because we expect that this family of equations are somehow easier to investigate than the full class of planar vector fields, polynomial planar vector fields. So the problem now asks for uniform upper bound of the number of limit cycles stated in terms of the degree of f. And there was a very nice contribution in 1977 by Linz, Pugh, and de Mello. So Linz is Alcides Linz Neto, Pugh, Charles Pugh, and Wellington de Mello. So they expected a maximal band equal to n minus 1 over 2. In fact, it is the band that you obtain with a first order computation. So they expect in some sense that first order computation will give all possible limit cycles. So it's rather natural. But in fact, there was a great discovery in 2007, 30 years after. Counterexamples were produced. And these counterexamples were produced with the idea to add a parameter epsilon here. And so that you have a fast law dynamics. And then using fast law dynamics techniques with some special integral, in fact, Dumortier, Panazzolo, and Rossari, and it was followed by an article by Peter de Méchalck and Freddy Dumortier. They gave an example where 4 limit cycles were found in a system of degree 6. Instead, that the conjectured maximum was 2. So it was really a great result. Now came the idea to try to see these limit cycles in such examples numerically. And so Mathieu joined the subject. And with Peter de Méchalck, they made a very beautiful article on numerical continuation techniques for planar fast law systems in Siam Journal of Applied Dynamical Systems. So 3 of the 4 limit cycles were numerically computed, and the 4th one was not for the moment not reachable. But it's a very, very beautiful development of this type of problem. Okay, maybe I explain a little bit to conclude some examples for cubic. Just to see more or less the limit of the theory, the limit of the. So cubic system is a kind of saga. So let us consider first this family, 9 parameters. So here you have a perturbation of a linear focus. For lambda equals 0, it's a linear center. And it is natural because it worked well for quadratic case. We take a perturbation which is homogeneous of degree 3. When you have the cubic, you may have the linear, but the quadratic also and the cubic. So let us think just to the cubic case. It reduced to 8 parameters after some scaling. Okay, so here, very nice, there is very nice news that in this setting, we can extend Dulac's theorem and see the full list of integrable cases. Okay, the full list of integrable cases for the full family of cubic centers, so meaning that you add quadratic term plus cubic, then this is open. We still don't know how to reach this. We have tried a lot of techniques, including me, other colleagues. We have tried by computational algebra actually, and in fact we cannot find all the list. But for this special family reduced to 8 parameters, we have full list, and it looks very close to the quadratic case, except that we have no Lotka-Volterra. So the central set is the union of the components H. It is Hamiltonian, it is of codimension 3. R is reversible, it is of codimension 4. And there is a kind of like Q4, but now it is called C6. It is a Darboux type with 2 factors, and it is of codimension 6. So this result was announced by Sibirsky and Malkin, but the first proof was given by Heinrich Jolendek in 1995. Here is C6, so you see it looks very much like Q4. It is, you have a polynomial of degree 4, polynomial of degree 6, this is a parameter. In fact, if you so the first integral is f4 to the 3 over f6 to the 2, and you have the same cancellation of when you compute the associated foliation, and it defines actually a cubic vector field after translation of coordinates. And so in 1995, Jolendek, after the final proof of the analogous Dulac theorem for homogeneous cubic, actually he used Botin technique, and he was able to prove the result for Botin. And he proved that in that case, the maximal number of limit cycles which can appear is equal to 5. So we now say that the cyclicity of the linear focus in this family here is equal to 5. Okay. In the same article, Jolendek explains some idea to get 11 cycles by perturbing a center. So he considers C6, which is of codimension 6, in the case of in the space of homogeneous cubic perturbations as an example of center to be perturbed by a cubic planar vector field. So you no longer perturb the linear vector field, you perturb around a center, which is a nonlinear center, and which is in this composite C6, which is analogous to Q4, if you like, for quadratic. Then he expected that, so he knows that C6 is of codimension 6 plus 6, 12. So it is natural, if the linearized Lyapunov quantities are independent, to believe finding 12 minus 1, 11 limit cycle, just by a kind of linear approximation computation, if you like. Okay. And this would be the same to check that the space of first bifurcation functions, M1 of H, remember this formula of Poincaré Ontriagin, M1 of H is the integral along the level sets of the first integral of the perturbative one form. But unfortunately, a young Chinese student, Dian Qi Bao, showed that the first bifurcation functions are not independent. So in the next article, Henrik Joladek proposed to use instead another codimension 12, noted CD45, which is built similarly to the, because in the cubic case, you have not only one class which looks like a Q4, but you have several classes now. And this is one of these classes. You have this integral, and you have invariant curves, which are F4 equals 0, which is a quartic, and F5 equals 0, which is a quintic. And to analyze the first bifurcation function, Johanneck suggests to deform the parameter A to 0 in such a way that the first integral is deformed transversally. Okay, so the computations can be done, but here again, in fact, it is necessary to use second order bifurcation function. So my formula, in fact. So in his article, 11 limit cycles, Joladek add to the list of a first order bifurcation function, a second order bifurcation function, computed by taking the derivative relatively to A. There are, it's a trick which appeared already in EDF, in fact. But there are not enough justifications. So finally, Henrik Joladek wrote a beautiful article, CD45 Revisited, in the book by Tony, Mathematical Sciences with Multidisciplinary Applications, Springer Proceedings in Mathematics Statistics, in honor of Christian Rousseau. So I recommend it, a very beautiful article. He showed that after all, it is necessary to add a third order bifurcation function. You go to first derivative of the first return map depending of one parameter epsilon. Okay, we get at least 11 zeros. Meanwhile, in fact, Colin Christopher considered another example, CD46, which is a Darboux with 3 factors, also of codimension 12. And by deformation of a parameter, he got a case where he could check by computer algebra the algebraic independence of the first 12 quantities. So the first scenario became, in fact, realizable with another example. So now we have several examples. And this was also checked by completely different computer algebra techniques by Marwan Han and Pei Yu. Okay. Some conclusion. What did we win? So we have certainly a much better understanding of the complex geometry associated with planar vector fields. this improves a lot of bifurcation theory. It improves numerical analysis, I believe, also on computer algebra for these, at least certainly numerical analysis can benefit of these problems, which are quite meaningful for pure mathematics. And it fostered the qualitative analysis of dynamical systems. Okay, this ends, I think, the first conference. We have 10 minutes left, so you can ask questions, and I hope you will ask the questions, and I hope that the quality of the transmission was nice. It's a bit frightful because we have not the return from the people, so don't hesitate to make comments or to pose questions. Okay. Unmute themselves if they want. But they 10 participants. Ah, Lubomir is there. Yes. Okay. We are. If there are no questions. There are no questions. We can close for today and resume tomorrow. Okay. Okay. So no questions. Okay. So I hope it was fine. Okay. So we resume tomorrow, and okay. So see you hopefully next time. Okay.